Welcome to the Health Revolution, a show for people who want straight answers about their health, their body, and their life. Here we cut through trends, through myths, and recycled advice to break down what actually works and why. We explore physical strength, resilience, and mindset through real science, real experience, and real conversations. You'll hear from guests who faced challenge, adapted, and moved forward with intention. No hype, no shortcuts, just clarity you can use. I'm your host, Adriana Morrison, health and fitness expert, speaker, and a mom who understands real life. This is the Health Revolution. We begin now. Welcome, everybody. You are tuning into the Health Revolution, and we're excited that you're joining us today. I'm your host, Adriana Morrison, and no matter which way you're tuning into us, please do not forget to hit the subscribe button. We want to stay connected to you. Also, if you are a returning viewer, we're excited that you are joining us, as well as us welcoming new viewers and listeners to our show. Our show is all about elevating the physical strength of the human body, the emotional resilience, and then the mental mastery. Those are the keys, of course, for us to have the type of life that we want to live. And we cover all conversations because they matter about how we elevate to a new level of strength. Today's conversation has everything to do about the idea of not living with chronic pain. You don't have to continue living with chronic pain. And so many people out there just endure the lingering effects of painful moments where they haven't figured out what they need to do to just be pain-free. And sometimes it's real easy to just resign to having a painful life where we're having those physical symptoms that we just don't know what to do. So chronic pain affects us in so many different ways, but it's time we understand it and look at the solutions that are available out there. And I'm excited to talk about this with today's guest. He's got quite the story behind him. And before we do that, take a look at this. Meet Dan Esposito, former NFL player, performance coach, and founder of the Undu Method. After being diagnosed with fibromyalgia and degenerative arthritis and told he needed 4 joint replacement surgeries, Dan was facing what many are told is a lifetime sentence of chronic pain, drugs, procedures, decline. Instead of accepting that outcome, he studied the inflammation cycle and rebuilt his body using a science-based natural approach. The result? He returned to elite competition as a world-ranked USATF master sprinter, 4-time All-American, and 2-time national champion. Now his mission is clear: to help people understand chronic pain, restore mobility, and reclaim their quality of life. Today, we'll learn how inflammation drives chronic pain, what can be done about it, and why a diagnosis does not have to define your future. Dan Esposito, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. I'm glad you showed some of the before pictures, so people can relate a little bit more.
Absolutely. You have quite the story that I cannot wait for us to dive into. Now, of course, you've had the professional athletic career that I would love for our viewers and listeners to know more about. Talk to us a little bit about what life was like then, and then your turning point as to why pain began to matter going forward.
Yeah. So, I didn't play football till I was a senior in high school. And then I walked on to a small school here in Pennsylvania. Didn't actually start to the 3rd game of my senior year. Became the offensive player of the nation that first game for that week. And then, had a really good season. And then the scouts came and I got signed by the Redskins while I was in college. So my final semester of school was art, theater, and getting ready to go play for the Redskins. And so I went, out with the Redskins and broke my jaw in my first game in 2 places. It was my first play, actually, in Kansas City. And then they gave me an injury settlement. They actually gave me 2 contracts. They cut me once, brought me back, kind of the life of a NFL guy. But then the Saints signed me the next year. And then unfortunately, I got punched in practice by a teammate when we were going pretty live, but no helmets. Broke my jaw again, came back to camp. They released me, and then they signed me back for the first about first quarter of the season. And then at that point, I realized, my shoulder wasn't healing. And it was the first time I was really struggling with some type of pain that wouldn't go away. And so eventually they released me. So I, 4 contracts, a couple broken jaws later, and then I'm heading into the work world. And so we, went into the work world. I eventually started working for Washington Mutual, and then when the mortgage crisis hit, I opened an energy brokerage, and I didn't know anything about the energy markets or energy business, but I just knew this was a business I needed to start, so I did that. But during that time, and also, from the time I stopped playing football up until then, I was forming bad habits. You kind of get out on your own in the world. You start getting information from a lot of outside sources on what health and nutrition is, and much of it is wrong. But so I started seeing some decline in my flexibility and my speed and just mobility, but not much. But when I was starting this brokerage, all I was doing was eating pizza and eating bad food, the standard American diet. Anything was on the table, I was eating it. And because food never really affected me greatly. But at that point, something was happening. I was really overloading the system with, basically the standard American diet, and that has consequences.
I'm curious that obviously you had injuries that had a big deal as to your football career ending.
Yeah.
Did you feel like you were healing that you were healing faster each injury that you had, or did you not think about the healing time and how much that you were able to bounce back from those injuries? Like,
Yeah,
what was
most
the time when that
Yeah,
was happening?
most of my injuries healed pretty quickly, especially, in college, and then, even before college, except, I'd have a shoulder where I couldn't lift my shoulder because I'd be, using my shoulders a lot when I run into people. And then by the next game, it would be fine. But I did have like a lower back thing that I was struggling with my I mean, it only went away a few months ago, actually. So, from the time I was a sophomore in college, and I was always trying to twist it and crack it, and it would happen, and then it would come back, and I was like, God, now I know what was going on, and a simple acupuncture needle probably would have fixed it, but I struggled with it until literally a few months ago. But yeah, my shoulders weren't healing, my legs were getting heavier. I was the Energizer Bunny in college. I could just, even though I was a sprinter, when we would do long distance workouts, I was always out in front of all the guys there. And so I was really athletic in a lot of different ways, but I noticed my legs just getting heavier and heavier. And I was like, gosh, what's going on? I was 24 at the time. And, now I know what's going on, but I wish I would have known back then, because I feel like I would have been able to perform better, not deal with those injuries as long.
Do you think that it's just because of the nature of the sport that it's not something that's dealt with in real time, that you got to heal and go back, heal and go back?
So, yeah, it's interesting because some guys leave the sport and they remain pretty flexible and don't have much pain. And some guys leave the sport after just a couple years and they're dealing with a lot of pain. So it all depends on the person and what's happening to them, either physically or through their food. And sometimes it can happen through medications or surgeries, but it just depends, because it becomes a soup of potentially different things that are happening that all come together and create chronic pain. I mean, there's simple things like fibrins and glycation, but when you see, one person might have a shoulder injury due to inflammation, one person might have it due to glycation. And so it's just really understanding why it's there, what's the underlying cause, and, what are the strategies to remove it, to free up that muscle.
So you were told the very first time that you were told you needed to have surgery, what was going through your mind? How serious was it at the time? Because four
So
total?
yeah, so I mean, I've had 13 or so surgeries, right? And
13?
just orthopedic surgeries, foot surgeries, the 2 broken jaws, which, those were necessary surgeries. But I had a lot of kind of orthopedic stuff going on. And so when they told me I needed the 2 knee replacements and 2 shoulder replacements, I had gone to an exhibit and I had seen a skeleton that had a knee replacement. And I was like, I'll never get one of those. It was a rod jammed into their femur. And I mean, it was like, so I was like, there's no way. Like, I was like, how can this be? Because I really didn't injure my knees. I didn't really injure my shoulder like in some sort of acute injury. Just over time, everything just felt like I can't move it, and there's so many pain signals that were happening. It was like, but what is this? And that was the real big question that I would dream about.
So you're having the surgeries. Are you healing the way that you're expecting, or were you rethinking how
No,
you?
so five of them were shoulder surgeries. And so the first one felt like it actually had some impact. But then the four after that, I mean, it probably created more scar tissue than did good. Yeah, the physical therapy that they have you do after surgery probably just isn't as intense as it should be. And you don't want to scare people away. So you kind of, baby them along, for lack of a better word. But it doesn't really break down the newly formed scar tissue from the surgery. And when these surgeons do these surgeries, they're focused on the joint and the problems in the fascia. It's very rare that the problem is actually the bones in the joint. It's all the connective tissue around it.
Were you happy with your coming out of the surgeries, all 13, especially with the joint related surgery, the joint surgeries that you had? Were you happy with the results? Did you feel like, you know what, I'm glad I had this done, or mixed feelings? Mixed
No,
feelings.
I never. I mean, one after the first one, it never. None of them. Well, I had one knee scope that was actually did do some good, and that was the typical protocol for a football, an athlete. It's like, go get your knee scope, go get your shoulder scope. You just go get cut until you can't play anymore, and it just becomes like a lifestyle that you adopt, and you trust in the system because you start in the system as a kid, and then you've got all these trainers and doctors and surgeons and stuff around you that you think have the answers. And you kind of find out that there's a lot of missing, like, gaps of knowledge in chronic pain. And yeah, that's what I wanted to figure out.
So, what was the dialogue like with your orthopedic specialist after the surgery when you were just giving a second thought to what you just went through? What was going through your mind, and how did the conversation go with them?
Yeah, so my surgeons were either Temple or Rothman, so they're really good, at orthopedics. And I had asked my surgeon after the last shoulder surgery that I got. I was like, So what's going on in there? Like, what's happening? And his response was, your muscles are tangled, and so that's not like a real thing, right? And I don't know if he really meant it that way, or if he's just kind of being offbeat or whatever, but that's what he told me. And so for years I would imagine myself just peeling my skin back and reorganizing my muscles, because I just thought my muscles were somehow tangled. And I think what he meant to say is, you have a lot of scar tissue and poor collagen growth attacking your muscles, and you should work on that. That would have been a better response from a well-regarded surgeon.
And to your point, you bring up a concern that a lot of people will have from time to time, that maybe the direction of medical procedures isn't going the way that one perceives it. Maybe it's one thing that the picture is painted a certain way, but then the outcome is different. So talk me through what your thought process was going forward. How did you know you needed to be your own advocate, and what really prompted you to dive deeper than what the specialists were telling you?
Yeah, so there's two different things. So, some days my knee would be in massive pain and really lacking mobility, and then other days I would feel no pain and it was fine. And so in my mind, I was like, it inherently can't be the actual joint, right? Because today it feels fine, and the pain was moving all over the place. And I was like, there's got to be something more. But really, the big catalyst is, so I'm 53, my son is 8 years old, and his mom is a bit younger than me as well. And I'm 265 pounds at the time. Diagnosis of fibromyalgia, degenerative arthritis. I mean, restless leg, frozen shoulder, all of it. And it was 3 months before he was about to be born. And I was just like, I'm going to fix this. I got to fix this. And from that point on, I was just committed to doing it, because I knew I couldn't be a good father. I have an older son as well. And, there were times that, because of the pain, you're in fight or flight and you're very anxious, that I just wasn't the best version of myself around him. And so, for his sake and just my family, just social interactions, I needed to figure this out because I was changing as a human and it wasn't serving anybody's better interest at all.
Through that before, so right before your son's being born, you have this aha moment of,
Yeah.
okay, things have to change. How
Yeah.
did you know where to start?
I didn't. I fell forward
Okay.
so many times. The first thing I did is I thought I would just stretch it away, and nothing happened. I mean, you would hear things cracking and stuff like that, and a little bit of relief, and but nothing was permanent. It just kept going back, and then at this point, so I was so puffy. My lymphatic system was really, really sluggish because of all the inflammation that was going on. And a friend of mine, had asked me why I was limping. My knees were swollen so much for 8 months. And she told me I should rub castor oil on my knees. And I looked at her like she was crazy because, you know, any naturopath must be crazy, right? It's just, that's how we're told. We're told they're, snake oil salesmen or, whatever, but it turns out they're not. So I rubbed the castor oil on my knees and then my lymphatic areas. And my general practitioner didn't know my lymphatic system was being overwhelmed. He wanted to send me for all sorts of other tests and stuff. But if you look at me, now that I know what it looks like, you're like, okay, you just need to go rub some castor oil on your knees. So the next morning I woke up, the swelling in my entire body was completely gone, especially my knees. And then I was just blowing stuff out of my face for the next 3 days. I was like, oh my gosh, okay, now my face looked normal again. You can see my cheekbones. And the next thing that happened is I had a beer, after my kid was born with some friends at a baseball game. And I felt really bad. And I thought, gosh, maybe I'm acidic and maybe I'm dehydrated. So I started looking into water and I came across a podcast with Dr. Mercola and Dr. Zach. Oh gosh, I can't remember his last name right now. Anyway, and they're talking about water, but at hydration at the cellular level. And so I started thinking, well, if I just create healthy cells, maybe I create a healthy rest of me. And that's how it started. And that's actually how I came back to the end. But in the middle, what I found where there's all this junk that's happening in your body and it's leaving behind these proteins and oxidation and glycation and oxalates and poor collagen synthesis. And they're all feeding one another, right? So if you've got this one, it's creating more of this one. Well, then it's creating more of this one. And it just becomes this soup of a mess. And so when you say you have something like fibromyalgia, it's just like you just have pain everywhere. And it's more than likely a combination of most of these 6 or 7 things that are happening in the body. And once I found out that they're all held together by these bonds that can be easily cleaved through a chemical reaction through supplementation, almost like WD-40 works on rust, I was like able to create this concoction of just, I'm just making supplements based on the biomechanics of this stuff. Like what's the science, not outcomes of studies, but what does the science show that this bond is cleaved by? Well, how do I put something in my body that creates that catalyst? And then I came full circle back to the cells just about a month or so ago, when you realize that our seed oils in our standard American diet creates a cell wall that has too much omega-6s versus omega-3s. It should be a 1-to-1 ratio. It's 15-to-1 in the standard American, due to the standard American diet in most Americans. And that omega-6 is highly inflammatory to even small stressors. So that's where inflammation starts. And then if inflammation is the root of all disease, well, I think we need to start at the cell again, right? So I started at the cell, focused on the actual things that were causing pain, and then I came back to the cells. But one thing that I also learned that I think is really important is fibromyalgia is considered a pain processing disorder. That's not true. Like you have nociceptors in your central nervous system. They're pain receptors. They are being aggravated constantly by this rough tissue that we've created through just a malnourished body. And they're sending a valid pain signal to the brain. So when you say it's a pain processing disorder, it's almost like you have like a mental health issue, or you have, this overactive, nervous system. But in most cases, it's not true. Now, you can degrade the myelin off of the nerve endings, and that can cause that, but that's in conjunction with all the other stuff that's going on, the inflammation, the oxidation, the glycation. They're all feeding one another.
We've got so much more to talk about. I'm glad you're diving into this. First, we're going to take a quick break. Stay right there. We've got more coming.
So in the calm bag, it has GABA, theanine, and taurine. So theanine, which is B1, which is also in our B complex, but it also helps with the stress response levels. It also helps with the neurological transmitters in our brain. Combined with the GABA, and then you add taurine to it. Taurine is a non-essential amino acid in our body, but it's found in our heart, our brain, and our eyes. So in my personal opinion, it's very essential in our lives. But taurine has a calming effect as well. When I was battling all my AFib issues, I was taking high doses of taurine because that would help with my AFib. It would help with the palpitations I was having. And it also helped with the anxiety of having the palpitations because I knew what was going on, and so taurine helps a lot with that as well. So those three together create such a wonderful concoction that just really calms people down.
Introducing Launchpad, the perfect partner to help you launch your dream project to the world. We know that time is of the essence, and we're here to help you make the most of it. With Launchpad, you'll get access to the most advanced digital tools and strategies to take your idea from a mere concept to a fully fledged success. Whether you're an aspiring entrepreneur or a seasoned pro, we have everything you need to make your mark in the world. Launchpad, your ultimate launch partner.
Welcome back, everybody. Today, we're talking about how you don't have to live with pain. Our guest today, Dan Esposito, he's the creator of the Undu Method, also a former professional athlete. And Dan, before the break, you started to dive deep into the components with what affects people and pain. And I want to start right there. So a lot of people hear the word inflammation and they don't really truly understand it. So can you break down what's happening to the body? What are we experiencing when inflammation is taking place?
Yeah, inflammation always starts at the cell wall, and it's a stressor. It can be food. It could be actual mental stress. It could be due to medications, physical trauma, slip and falls, things like that. And so the cell gets stressed and sends out signals. And then that recruits the cytokines, which then recruits the C-reactive proteins that you find in patients with rheumatoid arthritis. And then you create a clot. That clot becomes a fibrin. The white blood cells come, clean up the area, give off lymph, right? That's the swelling that you see. And then when the area is repaired, you have a collagen response in that area, which hopefully it's healthy collagen. And then once that's all stabilized, the threat is out of the way, and you fasted for 20 hours or more, your body releases enzymes from the liver to go cleave the fibrin, right? To break. So then the scar tissue becomes soluble. So they'll tell you that fibrin is an insoluble protein, but you need to cleave it and then it becomes soluble. And then that completes the inflammation cycle. And it's also, I think it's important to know, it's a healing cycle. It's not your body attacking itself.
Okay, so there's a varying degrees of inflammation that gets triggered in the body. So would you say, so in rheumatoid arthritis, that's a generalized, perhaps maybe a generalized form of inflammation versus no, you say
it's all
no.
the same thing. I mean, the cycle is the cycle, right? So it's always triggered at the cell. The problem is because you have rheumatoid arthritis doesn't mean the rest of the stuff isn't going to happen. The rheumatoid arthritis is measured by the C-reactive proteins, right? And you might have just eaten some pizza a couple days before, and now you have high C-reactive proteins. They're going to tell you have rheumatoid arthritis, but if you monitored it closely, that might have only been a 1 or 2 time event. But it's still going to recruit the fibrin. It's still going to cause the clot or the scar tissue. Still going to cause the collagen response. It's all going to happen. It doesn't decide to stop at one level.
Can you explain to our viewers and listeners what glycation is?
Oh, yeah. So glycation, it's when you mix a sugar molecule with a fat or a protein, and it can also be high fructose corn syrup, which is highly glycating, 10 times more than your standard sugar. And so it mostly happens within the bloodstream. And so glycation is that film that you see when you barbecue something. You get the barbecue sauce and the meat, and then you get that sticky film. So when you introduce the sugars or the high fructose corn syrup into your body, those sugars are going to attach to your muscles and your fat and cause that event to happen as well. Your body can put up with about 15,000 of these events per day. It can theoretically clean it up if you're healthy. The interesting thing about bacon and pork in general is you can have 15,000 per day, but if you have 3 strips of bacon, you're at 90,000, right? So then the glycation triggers inflammation as well as oxidative stress. And then it depletes the intervertebral discs. I'm saying that wrong. And so it looks like you have bone on bone in your spine as well. So glycation can cause a lot of problems and really gum up your arteries and your circulatory system.
So we do know that the standard American diet, and there are other areas of the world that are eating similarly because of that type of influence, that has not been the healthiest, to say the least. So what are you seeing in your studies and in you understanding deeper about all of this? Where is the connection that we are missing, especially with the trends that we are experiencing health-wise as a society?
So when you're looking at diets, you have 90 specific essentials that you need, and there's 4 categories of them: your essential nutrients, your essential amino acids, your essential minerals, and your essential fats. These essentials create pretty much everything else that your body needs just, to be healthy. Now, you can supplement with other things for certain conditions, but these are the 90 that you need. And if that's what the foundation of our health is on, I think everyone should probably know what those 90 are and where you can get them. So I think that's really important. And then the seed oil problem is, building that cell wall with a ratio of 1-to-1 is really critical if you really want to stop or slow down, over inflammation. I think keeping an eye on those 2 things would serve people really well.
Are there certain, I'm curious, are there certain type of chronic conditions that people wouldn't necessarily pair pain with what they're consuming food wise, their food choices? Are there things that maybe at first glance you would think, no way, they that wouldn't affect that, but that maybe that we're not paying attention to?
So, I think I heard the question the way I'm about to answer it. Um, there are, there's a lot of hidden things in foods that are going to hurt you. For one of them for me was juicing spinach and beets and doing stuff like beetroot powder, because the plant defense chemicals in them create kidney stones basically all throughout your soft tissue. They also depolarize mitochondria, a bunch of other stuff, create more inflammation, create reactive oxygen species. And, it's a superfood. So they tell us, but it's very little bioavailable nutrients in spinach. But yeah, I don't know did I answer that question the way you asked it?
So I'm curious if maybe there's certain physiological conditions that we're experiencing when
Oh,
our health
sure.
is deteriorating, and the foods that we're like, say, back pain,
Yeah.
or the type of the lingering pain that doesn't look like there's an origin of where it's coming from.
Yeah. I mean, it's other than medications, it's really your food. I mean, it's really you, and it's, the seed oils and sugar are probably the two top contributors in our foods that are contributing to chronic pain. Folic acid, I'm very anti folic acid. I think it's a crime to spray it on our food supply. But that can also create anxiety, which is going to trigger inflammation because it slows the body's ability to regulate the mast cells and the histamine response. And so slowly over time, I mean, you find that in your multivitamin. So you could be taking, multivitamin, and then that's slowing down your ability to regulate histamine. And then eventually you could end up with some chronic pain.
A lot of times when we are going through life, the pain affects us in different areas, obviously how we move, but then in places where we're supposed to show up. So say the workforce, say
Yeah.
that career-minded person, how does chronic pain, what are you noticing trends with chronic pain in the workplace or certain industries when someone is trying to climb up the ladder, trying to do well, trying to rock their career, and then
Yeah.
suddenly this is rattling them?
So, it's kind of a dichotomy, I think, but what I am noticing or seeing, and I've not done studies on different workplace types of pain or looked at them, but what I seem to see is that people who are more sedentary are the ones dealing with more chronic pain. Because if you've got a guy who's a roofer and he bangs his knee, he can't be out for 2 or 3 days. And so what's really going to happen to that knee is he's going to have inflammation, and then the swelling and the collagen in there. So if he stops working and lets that collagen set in, it's going to pull really tight. And then when the bonds set in, they're 7 times stronger than steel. So he actually needs to be out there moving that thing around so he can maintain the mobility that he has. It's like, but if I go and have surgery and I'm at a desk job and then I'm coming right home and sitting on the couch and then I'm going to bed, I haven't moved for 24 hours other than walking back and forth to to where I'm going. And so when you don't move, it allows for these bonds to set in more tightly, and thus, much harder to break apart unless there's a catalyst.
So, when you paint that picture, I think it's wild to me, because when you think of like sitting, resting, or say that scenario where somebody is resting and trying to heal, but
Yeah.
actually the resting, and you're shaking your head no.
Yeah,
I'm
it's
curious.
so that kind of led to a lot of my problems. Is I had a hamstring injury that just wouldn't heal, and um, so I was like, okay, I'm not going to do anything, and then just see if it just heals itself. It got worse and worse and worse, and I didn't understand the science behind it. But you have to be moving through this stuff in order to get it to heal, and also you have to move to increase your breathing, right? And so when you're breathing deeply, you're moving nutrients around your body, getting into tighter, spaces in your muscles that might have some fibrosis in them. So if you're not moving or at least breathing deeply, it's going to cause, that injury to not heal as quickly or at all.
So, I'll tell you, pain can be subjective because some people will interpret pain as this is just a sensation. I just can't, I can't go through and work through and navigate. How, in your mind, what do you tell those who maybe are more pain sensitive? How do you find the balance of working through just getting past those thresholds so that your body can respond better? And not deal with what do you say to that person who grapples with I don't want to move because I'm in a lot of pain or I can't? What do you say to that person?
Yeah, I mean, you have to be careful. I mean, so here's part of being in pain is you've got, once again, these tight junctions that if you tell them, oh, just go work out and work through it, it's not going to happen. So really, like, if you want to have a really good ethical you know information, I don't want to say treatment or anything like that, but you'd have to really look at their nutrition first and look at any catalysts, because to tell people to move through chronic pain isn't going to do anything. These things don't break down through mechanical movement unless the bonds are weakened. And like a fibrin, it's like a bungee cord, right? So if you stress it and stretch it, it's just going to come back with you, and it's just really hard to break. So I mean, yeah, I would also be like, so when I was dealing with all of this stuff, thank goodness I had started this business and I had a brother as a business partner, because there were many days during the week, and I mean all the time, where I just could hardly get out of bed. I mean, it was so bad. Every movement was painful. And the fortunate part about my life is that I didn't have to go work for somebody. A lot of people do have to go work for someone. So what do I tell? I mean, me personally, I would tell them they need to work with me. Outside of me, I mean, they're just going to have to struggle. I mean, unless they find somebody who has, a similar theory on how to manage chronic pain, because there's no other way to do it other than breaking these things down, right? That's what has to happen. So, yeah, I mean, if you're not working with me, it's just you're going to have to grin and bear it. I mean, they can find some solution. I would say work with me, but kind of follow me, follow some of my recommendations. I'm going to say you have to pay me to give you advice.
How did you change what were some of the changes you made in food?
Food? Oh gosh, I was eating deer heart and liver last night. So I never would have put that stuff in my face a few years ago. Yeah, ice cream, I had to get rid of. My father owned an Italian water ice and ice cream store. So I grew up just shoving ice cream and water ice in my face and not having any reaction to it. And I have a sweet tooth. I love chocolate. So there was never a 7-Eleven I would pass back when I was in chronic pain. But now it's very, so I'm not perfect and I don't want to be perfect. I'm at like 80% perfection and 20% standard American diet. We'll go get chicken wings at out, or, pizza. We had pizza yesterday, but the food in my house, I make sure that the food here is really good. And if we want snacks, we got to go out and get them. We're not holding snacks in my house.
And so that includes the whole family. The whole family's.
Oh yeah, everybody. Yeah, I mean, we want to go snacks, I mean, 7-Eleven's up the street. It's not that big of a deal, but it's going to take effort if you want to poison yourself.
And I love that. I once heard the phrase that says food can be the strongest form of medicine or the slowest form of poison. And I think, to your point, that unfortunately we're used to products that we don't realize that are not the best choice.
Yeah, I mean, even the health foods, you look at it and see how much sugar, like in an Odwalla little green smoothie drink. I did a little thing. I want to see how much sugar someone could get in the morning before they even got to work. So I put like these 4 things in the Odwalla, which is the health food, had the most sugar. Had muffin in there, and a Snickers bar, and I think a cup of coffee. And the Odwalla little green smoothie had the most sugar, and it had spinach in it that was juice, so it's going to create oxalates inside your body as well.
We got so much more to cover. First, we're going to take a quick break. Stay put. We're coming back.
Welcome to Renew Laser and Skincare, where beauty meets technology. From laser hair removal and anti-aging treatments to facial sculpting, acne care, and injectables, our expert team helps you look and feel your best with customized, results-driven care. Located in Littleton, Colorado, we offer a comfortable, welcoming space and cutting-edge treatments tailored just for you. Visit RenewLaserAndSkincare.com to book your transformation today. Renew Laser and Skincare, where confidence begins.
Hi, I'm Adriana, and welcome to Fit Bites. Today we're uncovering the subtle signs of perimenopause, the hormonal transition that can begin as early as your mid-30s, definitely in your 40s. Now, for us women, it's often misunderstood or missed altogether. You might notice irregular cycles, hard time going to sleep, mood swings, or sudden anxiety that just feels out of nowhere. But it's not in your head, it's hormonal. And it's now recognized that there are 66 symptoms of perimenopause that women experience that also evolve into menopause. For men, a similar shift happens too. It's called andropause, where testosterone declines and symptoms like fatigue, like low motivation and body composition changes, that they creep in. Now, if your energy is down, your sleep is off, or your body isn't responding the way that it used to, it might be time to get your hormones evaluated. Don't brush this off whatsoever. This is extremely important, especially as we're trying to understand our bodies. Early awareness allows you to take action, whether through lifestyle changes, nutrition, strength training, or medical support. Even more important, stay tuned for more Fit Bites with Adriana. Welcome back, everybody. Today we're talking about you don't have to live with pain, chronic pain specifically. And we've been spending quality time with our guest today, Dan Esposito. He is the creator of the Undu Method, and he's also a former professional athlete. And Dan, you created the flexibility fuel. And I want to bring up the first slide here that we have for our viewers and listeners. We're going to dive into this. Can you explain what's it for? What does it do?
Yeah, so it's at its core level, it's an essential amino acid supplement, which helps with muscle repair, synthesis, things like that. But then there's the blend of the stuff that the conditions that I just talked about. There's evidence in multiple studies that this other mixture of compounds adds an electron to the problem or breaks up this electrostatic interaction, therefore allowing the body to then actually break it down and remove it from the body. It's really like WD-40 for your soft tissue and fascia.
And when you created this, what was the one thing that you had in mind? What was the one goal you wanted other people to know?
Yeah, so I'm going to show you, I don't know where it is. It's on this side. These are all my supplements and spice racks. So when I was trying this out, I was like, okay, somebody said try this, somebody said try this, and I'd go do some research on it. So when I had the first click in my body and I was like, wow, something came loose, like I knew that I was like, what's next? And then eventually I was like, I got to share this with people. Even though I was really sick at the time still, I knew that I was going in the right direction. And so I just, people needed something that's easy to use, is effective, isn't medicine, is natural, and doesn't taste bad. But there's nothing like it. I don't want to pump myself up, but there's nothing out there that has this, it's been designed for this type of problem. And so it's super effective quickly because it's getting into your bloodstream, actively searching these things out. So it's working. And so I think that gives people hope that there is, something beyond pain. So yeah.
Can you name a success story from someone who's been on flexibility fuel?
Oh gosh. I mean, I'll give you a really simple one. I mean, I've had people with, and so once again, I'm not saying this is a cure or treatment diagnosis for any disease, but people have taken this and somehow these other things happened. So I've had people with fibromyalgia that after 2 weeks of taking it, you know, they're, sending me messages. This is great. I can't believe it. First time anything has ever worked. That girl that I'm thinking of just posted the other day, hey, I'm down 30 pounds, da da da. If you want to send me a message, ask me how, type thing. But she was like me, super sick, couldn't get out of bed. But then I had a buddy who he took it because he had a shoulder problem. And I didn't expect him to get much from it because we're not really sure where those enzymes are going to go, if they're going to, find their way to something specific. It's much easier to tell if it's widespread chronic pain. So a couple weeks, 30 days after, I didn't hear from him. So I called him. I said, hey, what's going on? And he says, you know what? I didn't even think about it. But when I reached for the phone, I realized my shoulder pain was gone. So it's like, it's like the dirty sock on the steps. You only notice it when it's there. You don't notice that someone moved it when it's not there. It's just kind of goes away.
Great point. Also, let's talk about real quickly the Undu Method. So I want to bring up the screen for our viewers and then listeners. Talk a little bit about your playbook, the
Yeah.
Undu Method chronic pain playbook.
Yeah. So it is a really comprehensive deep dive into where is pain coming from, what it leaves behind, what chemical bonds those things are held together by, and what supplementations or foods have been shown in studies to cleave those chemical bonds, and some other information. Yeah, like the foods and the origins of how these things develop. And then there is a bunch, and so I go through each one of them: inflammation, poor collagen synthesis, glycation, calcification, oxidative stress, oxalates, and I'm adding biofilms in there as kind of and maybe this, because it doesn't actually cause pain, but it can cause all the other things that are causing pain. And so all of this is backed by studies. And then I go into the practices, which is the fun part of, getting rid of chronic pain. It teaches you why these things that you've heard are effective. Like, for example, nose breathing, right? So nose breathing, everyone said you should breathe through your nose, but why breathe through your nose? Well, the reason you breathe through your nose is because it creates nitric oxide in your body, which keeps fibrins from forming. So if you ate that pizza and you're breathing deeply through your nose, that fibrin chemical bonds can't come together as easily. If I'm a mouth breather and I eat that same pizza, well, now those chemical bonds are going to stick together, and it's going to create more fibrosis than I would want. So it goes through those things. What's the science behind grounding, acupuncture, really dry needling, all those kind of practices that help remove or reduce the symptoms or underlying causes of chronic pain.
So this is a program for anyone who really wants to get really specific and granular with chronic pain, understanding what's happening and who specifically is it for?
Yeah. So first of all, I want all of my chronic pain warriors to have access to it, because that's where my heart is. Even though I'm an athlete, like, I can help athletes, and this definitely helps athletes either as a preventative or something they can take to help the body remove these chronic pain problems. But my emotional and mental state was so bad when I was in chronic pain. And I know that that's what other people are going through. And it's sort of been forced on us by this food and medical industry in a way, in some ways. I don't want to say completely. And a lot of us accidentally get into chronic pain. It's not something we intentionally did, and we didn't want to do it. And if we knew how to avoid it, we would have never gone down that path in the first place. So it's really for those that have chronic pain or don't want to get chronic pain, or you're just dealing with some soft tissue injury. I mean, chronic, it starts with soft tissue injury, and then it becomes soft tissue injury everywhere else, right? It just keeps spreading and spreading. So, yeah, everybody should have it.
So for our viewers, the website is right there at the bottom of the screen. For our listeners, the website is withme.so/Undu Method, where you can get your hands on this. We're going to take a quick commercial break. Stay put. We are coming back.
Are you pouring your heart and soul into your business, but nobody seems to notice? Are you struggling to get your offer, your expertise, your program seen by the right people? Well, you're not alone. At Lunar Marketer, we believe every business deserves to shine. That's why we specialize in boosting your visibility with a powerful mix of strategies that actually work, without the complicated systems or outdated outreach. Scan the QR code now to schedule your free consultation or email us to learn more.
You don't have to live with pain. That has been the topic today. Our guest today, Dan Esposito, coming with a wealth of knowledge. Dan, where can we find you in the social media space?
So social media, so TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, etc. is all the word www.instagram.com/Undu Method, or just searching in Instagram Undu Method. That's pretty much anywhere. That's LinkedIn, that's YouTube, whatever other social media channels are out there. My mind's drawn up like, oh, Facebook as well. Yeah.
Yes. And then, of course, your website, we want to make sure one more time that the audience knows undo.me, undo.me is where you're at, and where you can find all the information that we're highlighting today. What is the one takeaway you want to make sure our audience gets from those viewing and those listening from
Yeah.
what we're about?
One is, more omega-3s, right? Less omega-6s. That's going to make a huge difference. But also, I think something really important is your diagnosis is not a sentence. It's not your life sentence. It's just a diagnosis. It could be wrong, right? It could be a wrong diagnosis, or there could be alternative ways to treat that diagnosis. So I think a lot of people just say, okay, well, there it is. Now I'm part of this tribe and that's my identity forever. I would rather have their identity be a healthy, happy person who's thriving in life. So yeah, if you get a diagnosis, and use AI if you get that diagnosis, and just start asking questions if there's other treatments available, and just see where it takes you. I mean, obviously talk to your doctor about it first, but there's alternatives out there.
Dan Esposito, creator of Undu Method. Dan, it's been amazing to have you here. Thank you so much for sharing your wealth and your knowledge. Thank you for being here.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
And we want to give a quick shout out to our sponsors. We appreciate their support for our show: Biomed Mobile IV, Dapper No Code, Launchpad, Renew Laser and Skincare, and Synergize Fitness. And for our audience, we are on the web. You can find us on healthrevolutiontv.com. There you can sign up for our newsletter. You can certainly email us with any show episode ideas that you might have. In the corner of your screen, you'll see our QR code. If that's easier for you to grab, we certainly invite you to do so. And then don't forget, every Tuesday and Thursday, you can find us here on the Arion TV channel on E360 TV, 10 a.m. Pacific, 1 p.m. Eastern. And in addition, the ever expanding distribution handles that you can find us. That is all the time that we have for today. Until next time, take care of yourselves. We'll see you soon.